You're on a professional team this year for the
Yep.
first time. Has that made a big difference to you? Is it helping?
Yeah, I mean, so I went out and met the team at team camp at the end of January and picked up my shiny new bikes. So I've obviously got road bikes, I've got the time trial bike, the twin blade, and then they're also building me the Villiers Aero road frame as well to try out as a potential time trial bike in case I happen to prefer the Aero road bike or be able to get a slightly different position on the Aero road frame compared to the twin blade. It's a very different experience for me because I've suddenly got all these different people around me whose job it is to do different things. So, you know, there's a whole team of mechanics and a team of soigneurs so that, you know, if I crash and I break a shoe, I can literally send an email to the kind of head soigneur and say, my shoe's broken, can you send me new shoes please? And then new shoes would arrive for me, which is a strange experience for someone who for the past 3 or 4 years has had to go, oh, I really want that new front wheel, but it costs this much money, so I'm going to have to save money for this, and so I'm not going to be able to buy a new pair of shoes because that's more important to me. So it's kind of nice to be able to go, I could really do with a new pair of shoes because my old shoes are getting a bit tatty. Can I have some new shoes, please? Yeah. But then also there's the experience of Rachel, who kind of is the DS of the women's team, because she has years.
This is Rachel.
Rachel Heel. So she has years of racing experience. You know, she represented GB at an Olympics.
And how many of you are in the ladies' team?
Oh my word! I off the top of my head, I'm going to have to do a count. I don't know whether there are 11 of us, 12 of us. The thing is, there's a really diverse range of people. So we've got quite a few riders who are going to be focusing on track, certainly this year, because Laura Brown is in the Canadian setup. You know, she was in their team pursuit squad at one of the World Cups, and Rushley Buchanan was in the New Zealand team pursuit squad for the World Championships. And then we've got Sean Morelli, who is a para-athlete, so she'll hopefully almost certainly be going to Rio as a para-athlete, who won't necessarily be doing that much kind of on the road with us as a team, but is still obviously on the team. So there are 10 or 12 of us, but you know,
you don't all get together at the same time.
No, team camp, most of us were there at the same time, but Rushley was in New Zealand still. And
what about the program? Do you follow the program? You know, that the team get you. You know, is it?
So the team have obviously a list of races that is on our calendar for the year. So we started out at the Tour of Qatar at the start of February. We're now doing a block of racing in Europe, and there are something like 8 or 10 races on the calendar in Europe. Though, you know, there's a group of us in Europe to do these races. But for example, I said to Rachel, can I not do this race and this race, which is actually 2 races this weekend coming, because it would be really useful for me to be back in the UK to submit my PhD. So, you know, there is the set calendar, but at the same time I can kind of feedback, well, I'd quite like to do this, or not do this. And at the same time, there are going to be time trials both in the UK that I want to do, and also some UCI time trials, which are probably not on the team's calendar, but I could say to Rachel, well, you know, I'd really like to go and do Chrono Champenois again in September. And, you know, I've not mentioned it yet, but, you know, they'll probably be able to send a team car and a mechanic and a Swanee with me to look after me at that race.
And are you hoping to ride the Olympics?
I hope so, yeah. That is the big goal for this year. The qualification period runs from the 1st of January to the 5th of June, so I'm kind of now in the qualification period.
And what have you got to do to qualify? Is it a certain time? Or?
No, there's a selection document online, but it's not specific. It doesn't say you need to do this or you need to do that. It says that they look at race performances within the selection period. They look at UCI ranking, UCI points. They look at suitability of the athlete based on the nature of the course, and they look at anything else they want to look at.
And if your face fits.
Yeah, I mean, so you have to be part of the road team to do the time trial.
Right.
So you can't just do the time trial.
Okay.
So you've got to be part of the road squad, which is fine because obviously I was part of the road squad at the World Championships last year. I was actually the only other British woman to finish the world road race. And, you know, I think I did a pretty good job of helping Lizzie, certainly in the earlier stages of the race. So I'm quite confident in my ability to be part of the road squad, as well as then hopefully being the selected time trialist. But we won't actually know how many places we have for the road team until the end of May. So it won't be known until the 31st whether we've got 3 or 4 spots for the road.
So you've basically got to sort of balance both then, really, to make sure that you're good enough on the road to get in the team so that you can then be the time trialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm finding it a bit difficult to kind of work out exactly how to focus, you know, my calendar and my priorities and everything else in terms of.
Had you done much on the road, you know, road racing or crits or, you know?
So my first road wasn't really a road race, I suppose, because it was a crit. But my first road race was very late in 2012. It was October, and I did one of them. And then 2013, I did a little bit more road racing, but to be honest, didn't enjoy it at all. 2000.
Why didn't you enjoy it? Just as a matter of interest.
I think because I started cycling so late, I was quite nervous.
In
a bunch. Bike handling and certainly tactics for road racing was not something that came naturally to me. You were the one tearing off up the road and everybody tearing after. Yeah, so anything that required power from time trialling, absolutely fine. Yeah. But as soon as kind of multiple people were around me and you know sprinting off was involved, I was a bit lost. Yeah. So actually 2013, 2014, I was road racing because I felt it was something that I should improve. And because Mark had said to me the whole time, you can't really make a career just out of time trialling. Not easily. No. Especially probably as a female athlete. It's harder to make a career solely time trialling. So I was kind of trying to get better at it, but not really enjoying it. And then actually it kind of clicked at the end of last March. So I did Gent-Wevelgem in Belgium at the end of March, and the conditions were horrendous, like really horrendous.
As they often are.
Yeah, but it was so bad. There are pictures of Geraint Thomas being like blown into a ditch off his bike. Yes, that was Gent-Wevelgem. And the women raced on the same day in the same area of Belgium, so the conditions were just as bad for us. And it was probably a bit more difficult because in general we're a little bit lighter than the men that were being blown into ditches. No, it was nearly 200, maybe a bit smaller, but it was still nearly 200 riders. Okay. So still a big bunch. It was tough, but I don't know, something kind of clicked that day, and I discovered that actually I could road race, and the increase in confidence really helped me. So actually last year I was really enjoying road racing and kind of had my best season on the road, which culminated in the World Championship road race. Yes. And now obviously I'm kind of been thrown in the deep end perhaps a little bit with, you know, a full season of UCIs, but
so let's look at for May. What is the things you've tried so far? What is your sort of favourite discipline? What's your favourite distance? What's the thing that you think, this is my thing?
I think time trialling is where my heart is always going to be. It's so pure.
Don't have to say that because we're up.
No, I'm not. It's so pure in terms of a form of cycling. You know, barring something like a puncture or a mechanical or something
Yeah.
like that, the strongest rider on the day is going to win the race. It's not affected by the tactics or, you know, whether you can sprint off to get a gap and then hold it, or whether you can sprint at all if it's a sprint finish. You know, it's so pure. It's scientific, which fits in perfectly. So yeah, I think my heart will always lie in time trialing, and I'll always be a road rider who will, you know, do the UCI time trials and hopefully focus on time trial stages of stage races. But actually that's quite useful because you can get a good time gap in a time trial that then could hopefully lead to a GC win in a stage race.
Indeed, yeah.
So I think the ability...
It's a great skill to have, you know.
Yeah, the ability
again,
to be a good time trialist, I think, is very useful. If I'm only going to have one card to play, the fact that I'm a strong time trialist, I think, is probably quite a good card. So, and it makes me useful for a team because actually I can sit on the front of a bunch and pull back a brake or make the race hard for somebody else in the team. I can hopefully be part of a good lead out for our sprinter. So actually, and coming back to kind of my team this year, I've got a lot to learn probably about the European bunches, but I've got a really good team of riders around me with experience like Iris, who's been road racing for years and years. Iris Slappendal. So, you know, she's a wealth of knowledge in terms of the racing. We've got some brilliant sprinters like Corinne Riviera is a phenomenal sprinter. So hopefully I'm going to be able to use my time trialing strength to kind of help her out. But no, they're really helping me kind of become a better rounded rider in terms of teaching me about the bunches and about the races.
What about your favourite time trial distance? You have CTT wise though.
CTT wise, I think I love 10s. I think 10 is probably out of the fixed distances. A 10 is great, but I also love the challenge of you know, the more sporting courses. So traditionally, and unfortunately I'm not being able to do it this year, but the last couple of years I've started my time trialing season at the CC Sudbury Mad March Hilly, which is 22 miles of like rolling countryside. And it's lovely, and I love the kind of more sporting courses. So things like the CTT time trial series, those kind of courses are great fun because they're a bit more technical. They're a bit hillier, so they're more like the UCI time trials. So that kind of thing's great. But if I was choosing a fixed distance to do, I love the 10.
Good old 10s, yeah.
Good old 10, and again, anything from a really quick 10 on the 718 through to, you know, a more rolling 10. So my local 10 is the E33 10, which is Bottisham, and it's not a quick course. My fastest time on it is a mid 22, I think, which is
it's not that quick then. Given that you've now got the national competition record.
Yeah. So I mean, a mid 22 is the course record on that course, and I think Hutch has maybe just done I think he's done a 19 on it, but you know, it's not a quick course. But which is ironic given that we're in Cambridge and most things are flat around Cambridge. There's a big bridge in the middle of this 10. But anything from like a flat 19-minute 10 on the 718 through to, you know, a 22-minute 10 on Bottisham is...
What about the longer distances?
I've done 100, 2 50s. Yeah. Actually, the 50 is probably the distance that I don't like, or like the least of the fixed. Because a 100-mile time trial... I think somebody said to me in the lead up to the National 100 last year, kind of, you know, you might find this a bit more difficult and, you know, take you a while to recover from the 100, which, yeah, I'd never actually done a 4-hour ride in the time trial position until the Tuesday before the National 100, where I decided it would be a good idea to see if I could ride in the time trial position for 4 hours. But doing a 4-hour ride is a common thing for me. So actually, yes, it was hard, and things were definitely hurting by the end of 3 hours 55. But doing a 4-hour ride, or 4-hour race was not too bad for me, because again, a lot of the UCI races that I'm doing, the road races, might be 3.5 hours, and I had done, you know, UCI road races before doing the National 100, so I'm used to racing for that length of time.
Not like that.
Yeah, not like that. But the 50, I need to get to grips, I think, with the 50 a little bit, because effectively you go out at 25 pace but try and hold it for twice as long.
Yeah.
So the 50 is the distance that I haven't worked out yet, whereas I feel quite comfortable with 10s, 25s and even the 100, even though I've only done 100.
Yeah.
But I think I still have things to learn about the 50.
Okay, so what about, obviously we're sort of early in the Olympic year, you hope to take part in that, and you're finishing your PhD this year.
Yeah.
What's your, are you going to ride professionally for a while now, once your PhD is out the way?
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, it's a bit of a weird year actually for me, because I think in an ideal world, I would have had my first professional year not in an Olympic year, because I've got a lot to learn about professional riding, and the fact that it's an Olympic year has put additional pressure on me, because I was part of the World Championship team last year, and you know, it's been a dream of mine ever since I was a child to go to an Olympics. Even before I really did any sport, I was like, oh, I'd love to go to the Olympics, says the kind of naive 5-year-old who has no idea what's involved in doing that, you know, or even a sport that she particularly, you know, takes part in that's an Olympic sport. But suddenly it's become a possibility, you know, and you know, I'd love to do it. But I think ideally I would have had a year, 2 years to kind of learn my craft a little bit without the pressure of the Olympics.
Yes.
But that's not happened, so I need to try and learn as quickly as possible. But at the same time, it's nice that it's fallen into place now, because for the past couple of years, Mark and I have talked about, okay, well, I'd quite like to see if I can make it in cycling. And we said, okay, well, I finished my PhD in April 2016, so we can probably afford for me to cycle full time for a year, maybe 2 years at a push, without any kind of pay, to see if I can make it. And then if I don't make some kind of step up or get a contract within that time, then maybe I'm going to have to go and look for a real job. But thankfully, after British Nationals last year, everything kind of fell into place. You know, I had a brilliant season, won British Nationals, went to the World Championships, found a contract. So suddenly I've actually managed to find a contract for when I'm finishing my PhD. So hopefully I can learn a lot this year, make the improvements that I need to in order to be able to kind of continue being able to find contracts, you know, and make it professionally with the aim of, okay, maybe I might not make Rio this year as much as I would love to, but there's Tokyo in 4 years, and there's a lot of really high level women's racing every year in between Rio and Tokyo. So, you know, I've got targets I've got races that I would love to be able to win one day.
Like examples?
Oh, you know,
Put you on the spot.
Because I'm quite strong, I think that could lead to me being quite a good classics rider. You know, a bit of a Cancellara. I love Fabian Cancellara, so you know,
we heard it here first.
Love Fabian Cancellara, and you know, he's obviously a brilliant time trialist, but also just a classics pro. So hopefully, once I've learnt some of the kind of the bunch skills and the positioning skills that you really need for the classics, then I could actually be quite a good classics rider. So something like the Women's Tour of Flanders, or you know, a real iconic women's.
Are those the sort of improvements you talked about a moment ago that you need to make?
that I need to make, but you know, my teammates are kind of helping me make as well. So more bunch craft, more. It's positioning that, to be honest, that I'm struggling with a little bit at the moment, because in the classics that I've done over the last few weeks, the bunches are 200 riders, and being, you know that 3k out from a narrow section of road that leads up a climb, all of those 200 riders wants to be at the front. And it's having the confidence, the ability, the strength to kind of get to the front and stay there so that I am on the front going into that climb. That's what I need to work on.
You may have the strength, but you don't quite have the roadcraft at the moment to mix it with.
And if I'm not at the front and a split goes on the climb, then okay, I'm strong, and so I can maybe ride across the split, but actually do I want to be using all of that energy to try and ride across the split? And it's not an efficient use of my power kind of thing. So I need to learn the skills to be able to be at the front when the split's going, and then I've got the strength to be able to stay in that front group and then make further selections. But it's kind of learning my trade a little bit.
And what about on the time trial scene? What sort of ambitions do you have there? Have you got some records in your sights that you'd like to add to your list? Yeah,
so I'd like to lower my 10 record a little bit rather than just having got it by 1 second.
How low can you go?
Oh, I don't know. That's a question for a mixture of Zav and Jamie and Mark, probably. Right. But I don't know. I think I can take some more off it, especially with the right day, actually, because despite obviously having got the 10 record last year, it actually still wasn't a brilliant day on the 718 that day. I think I was talking to some of the riders after the race who'd done the 718 a few weeks before and gone significantly quicker.
Yes.
So actually,
well, that's a sign, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think if I hit that course on a good day as well as obviously making improvements in terms of aerodynamics and power and everything else, then actually
half a minute.
Well, maybe.
No pressure.
I'd also. The 25 competition record is 50.01.
Yeah.
So it
needs taking the right side.
It needs to go to a 49. I feel. I mean, I'd like to take some of the comp records. That's probably that's maybe something I'd like to do the later half of this year. Actually, is give some of the comp records a go, because after kind of July, probably, the Olympics are in early August, but from there the UCI Women's Road calendar kind of quietens down a little bit. A lot of the racing is done by August.
Yes.
So okay, the Olympics are the start of August.
You're going to be on fire in September.
But so actually there are quite a lot of fast courses in August, in September. I mean, I'll still be training hard because last year I was third in Chrono Champenois, which is mid-September UCI 1.1 time trial. So I'd love to be able to kind of go a few steps higher on the podium. So I'll be training hard for that. So hopefully I should have some really good form to maybe take some of the comp records a little bit lower later this year.
Watch this space.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess a long-term goal would be, for me in time trialing, would be that I would love to win a medal at the Worlds. Yeah. Eventually in a time trial.
Excellent.
So it's a bit of a far out one, but
not at all. I mean,
long-term time trialing goal. I've got the world time trial champion on my team, so I'm gonna ask Linda for her, ask her for some tips.
Well, you're not going to be short of advice with your team, your coaches and other people around you. So that's great. In terms of what if you were offering tips and advice someone new to the sport on how to best realise their potential, what would that be? Could you?
I think time trialing actually is a great place for newcomers, because you don't have to feel nervous about doing a race with people who are better than you. And in a road race, if you're starting out and you don't really know how you're going to fare, you might be worried what happens if I get dropped right at the start and then get pulled out of the race. And
once you're off the back, you're finished.
People don't like that. They feel discouraged if they're out the back before they've even started. I've been there. I've done that, and it's horrible. You then spend however long until they might pull you out of the race altogether, thinking, well, I'm rubbish, aren't I? How am I ever going to be good at this? But time trialing's great, because pretty much everywhere in the country they've got evening 10s. They'll have a time trial league throughout the summer where you can turn up, pay £3, £4, ride a 10, doesn't matter what kit you're using, get a time, and then go back the next week or 2 weeks later on the same course, do it again, get another time. Okay, the weather might be different or something like that, but you can see improvements.
Yeah.
And for me, that's one thing that I love about the Bottisham 10 course. It's where I did my first evening 10. You know, I think the first time I rode that course, it maybe took me 28 minutes or 29 minutes. I think my chain fell off the first time I did that course after the roundabout, and I stopped in a lay-by and put my chain back on and then carried on again. And actually going back to that course at least once a year, I know how quickly I can do that course. And it's a real good indication for me of how I'm going.
Yeah.
I think Alex Dowsett said something similar about his local time trial course, one of the Malden and District
Yes, he still goes back
courses.
and does that.
He goes back and does it because it's a good indication for him of how where he is in his training. But you know, for someone new, it doesn't matter what time they're doing, but being able to kind of measure it week on week and okay, is my training working? Am I getting a bit faster? Week on week, month on month, year on year, they can see the improvements. And you can set yourself little goals like, you know, doing a 10, the 24-minute mark. Can I do a 10 at more than 25 miles an hour? So that's, I think time trialing is a great place to come into the sport. And everyone's so friendly. Like I obviously came from a rowing background. It's not that people are unfriendly, but you go to an event and there isn't the kind of chat after the event with members of another team or another crew, or you know, you'll talk to your own crew, but it's I don't know, I didn't find it quite I never really found other crews really approachable to go and be like, oh well, you know, the river was a bit choppy today, or you know, something silly like that. Whereas, you know, after a time trial, everyone goes, gives in their number, gets a cup of tea, and then says, oh, that was a bit windy, wasn't it? Or, you know, oh, I didn't like that roundabout, you know, but it's friendly, and everyone's so nice. And I've made some real friends who have been so supportive from the time when I was doing, you know, 27-minute 10s right through to doing a 19-minute 10. And, you know, there are people that I raced against in my first year who, you know, I'll do something now and they'll send me a message and say, you know, congrats, I can't believe how far you've come. And, you know, people that I met through time trialing that I'll invite to my wedding later this year. That's the other thing I'm trying to do this year. I'm planning a wedding. So try and qualify for Olympics, submit PhD, plan a wedding. So 3 things that maybe you should have a year each to devote to. No, that is my...
Well, sounds like good advice. You know? Well, congratulations with that.